Hello Internet, welcome to the Empirical Sword, where science plus gaming equals awesome. I am Lore Master DLC79, and today I say, you can't dance in clanky pants! And for everybody who understood exactly what that means, then good for you. You're done with this video. You understand all of it? I'll see you in the next one. Go on. I'll see you in the next one. For everyone who has absolutely no idea what I just said and is convinced that I'm very likely losing my mind, well, you're probably right. I probably am losing my mind, but stick around. So, you can't dance in clanky pants. I am talking about armor. Specifically, the depiction of armor in role-playing games. Role-playing games typically represent armor as armor class, or armor rating, or armor value, or armor number, armor something. And basically, it represents your ability to avoid getting hit by a thing. But you have this value even if you're not wearing armor, even if you're wearing regular clothes like I am. And no, I'm not claiming that these are my regular clothes. I actually dress up for these videos. But if you are wearing regular clothes, that means that if somebody were to attack you with something like this, and yes, I recognize that this is a kitchen knife, but it can still be used as a weapon. Basically, the armor value, rating, class, number, majig, means that if somebody were to attack you with one of these, you could dodge and weave and maybe backflip and cartwheel to avoid getting hit by this thing until you get hit by this thing, and then it hurts, and we classify that as a hit and you suffer damage, and that's the whole point. But then let's say you put on armor, say full plate, which is made of hardened plates of metal. And this is probably the type of armor that game developers think about mostly because, I mean, it looks cool. If somebody were to attack you with a thing like this, again, while wearing a full plate, all of a sudden it would be harder for them to land hits on you. Now, does that mean that you're cartwheeling and backflipping better in this heavy, clunky armor? Probably not. The idea that developers most likely have when they think about this is, this blade here is very thin, and plate armor was actually designed to guide bladed weapons away from whoever's wearing the armor. That's why it's usually not a good idea to take a weapon like this and swing at somebody wearing plate armor, because you're not really doing anything. You have to attack the armor in just the right way to bypass it. But what if we start considering weapons like this? And yes, I realize this is a tool, but it can be used as a weapon. And yes, I realize it's rusty, but it can be used as a weapon. And this is relatively similar to, periods accurate, quote marks, warhammers. Although the actual warhammers would have a more multifaceted head than a smooth head like this, because warhammers were not designed for driving nails. They were designed for biting into plates of armor and doing damage to armor and basically sticking to the armor during the impact so that all of that energy is delivered into and through the armor. So now let's think about what's going on here. First, let's imagine you get hit by something like this without armor. Well, you will likely suffer bruising and damaged muscle, broken bones, bone fragments in your lungs, which is not fun at all. But if you're wearing armor, when you get hit by something like this, the armor takes most of the damage. The plate is deformed and it has dent in it. You probably get some bruising, and it probably doesn't feel good, but at least you don't have bone fragments in your lungs, which is no fun at all. So it basically reduces the amount of damage that you suffer by taking some of that damage itself. The armor does. So why is it that weapons like this have their interaction with armor lumped into the same category as weapons like this? Well, most likely it has to do with simplicity. Back in the olden days of tabletop gaming, there were a lot of charts, a lot of tables, some graphs. Mostly it was charts and tables. And to split weapon interaction with armor into multiple categories, that just means more charts, more tables. So it was probably mostly had to do with simplifying that aspect, which in modern computer gaming We can have computers dealing with all the charts and the tables and everything. But I'll get to that in a little bit. But another part of it probably has to do with certain difficulties involved with the depiction of damage reduction. Before we can fully understand that, we have to understand that back in the olden days of tabletop gaming, the game engine centered around one of these. That's right, a D20. There, now you can see the 20. A 20-sided die. 20 faces, each side with an integer on it. You roll it, and you get a number from 1 to 20, and I just rolled an 18, which is pretty good. But it's only integers. Hit points is only measured in integers. Damage is only measured in integers. When you roll a damage die, you get an integer. When you deal damage to a target, you do an integer amount of damage, which subtracts an integer amount of hit points, which means that damage reduction has to be expressed as an integer. Okay, that's easy, right? Integers are easy. Well, let's imagine that you have a damage reduction of 5 due to whatever armor you happen to be wearing. And you're going up against a monster whose max hit is 4. Well, it doesn't really take a genius to realize that up against that monster, you are untouchable. It cannot hurt you at all. But let's say you turn the corner in the dungeon, and now you're up against a monster whose max hit is 50. And I realize this is 10 fingers, but I don't have 50 fingers. Well, your damage reduction of 5 reduces that to a damage of 45, which means it's like you have no damage reduction at all. It's not really that important anymore. In fact, it's like the armor you're wearing isn't really helping you versus the thing that it really needs to help you against. So what's the point of wearing armor then? That's the issue. To keep damage reduction more balanced across all possible levels, it really needs to be a percentage. And here we get back to the integer hit points, the integer damage. If you're going up against a monster that deals 5 points of damage and you have 50% damage reduction, it does 2.5 points of damage to you. So you lose 2.5 points of health. But you have integer measure of health. So where does that 0.5 point of damage go? Do we round up? Do we round down? Do we hold on to it until you suffer another 0.5 damage? How do we keep track of that? And again, this comes down to simplifying the issue. But here's the interesting thing. If we have some sort of game engine that involves that gives us a probability of being hit on this turn versus this turn versus this turn, over time, this probability of whatever probability of being hit acts sort of like damage reduction. Let's say we consider that monster who does 5 points of damage. It always does 5 points of damage. Every time it attacks, it's doing 5 points of damage, and you happen to have a 50% chance of avoiding one of its attacks. So on this turn, you fail to avoid it, you suffer 5 points of damage. On the next turn, maybe you do avoid the attack, and you suffer 0 points of damage. Over time, over attack after attack after attack after attack, the time average of the amount of damage you suffer from this monster comes out to be 2.5 points per attack. It's like you have damage reduction, except you don't. So I think that is kind of what developers were trying to do with the whole armor class. Reduces your chance of being hit, rather than reduces the amount of damage that gets through your armor. So yes, that's ye olden days of tabletop gaming. But what about modern computer gaming, where we can keep track of values as floating point decimals? Well, we have some issues. I mean, if we were to display the numbers on the screen in decimal format, it would look like a decimal with lots and lots of decimal places. But if you think about how the computer is actually storing this data, we have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of bits that can be either a 0 or a 1, which I'm pretty sure are integers. which means that we have a very large binary integer storing some number. So ultimately, the computer is still dealing with integers, but it can keep track of much larger integers than we can, and it can do math on much larger integers faster than we can. So even though the computer is keeping track of all of the numbers as integers, we can actually possibly use very, 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 very large integers, and we can use approximate percentages. Say, for example, instead of giving a player 100 hit points, maybe the player has 100,000 hit points, and monsters deal, say, instead of 1 point of damage, they deal 1,000 points of damage. And you have like let's go with 50% damage reduction. The mental math is easier there. So 1,000 becomes 500. So you suffer 500 points of damage every single attack. So that kind of works. We can kind of get away with that in computer games, and there are a lot of computer games out there that actually use something similar to this, where armor is just outright damage reduction. Of course, back to weapons like this, they actually do get deflected away from the wearer of the armor, if we're talking plate armor. So maybe we actually should deal with this type of weapon and this type of weapon separately. What do you guys think? I'll save that as a question to be answered in the comments. Just throw out your opinions. So one more kind of a gaping issue about the entire mechanic of armor class reduces your chances of being hit by a thing. The main issue is occasionally a player can get some really bad rolls back to back. And during segments like this, a player can be hit with maximum damage every single time. And during segments like this, it's like you're not even wearing armor, even though you're wearing armor. Now, granted, the law of averages balances this out. On the grand scheme of things, you're going to have segments of bad rolls and then segments of really good rolls back to back, where it's like your armor is just really, 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 really good. So how realistic is this? I don't know. Maybe somebody out there in the audience has a lot of experience fighting in armor and has an opinion. If you do, just get down in the comments. So, there you have it. You can't dance in Clanky pants. But when you're wearing Clanky pants, maybe you don't have to, because attacks from weapons like this just slide right off you. And attacks with weapons like this, you damage your armor. But not you, mostly. So, the lesson of the story is armor provides both deflection, reducing your chances of being hit, as well as damage reduction. Basically, they're reducing the amount of damage that gets through your armor. But this entirely depends upon the type of weapon that you're being attacked with. Yet games don't really represent this. It's either one or the other. Very rarely is it both being applied to different weapons. So, what's your opinion? Should we stick with one? Should we stick with the other? Or should we actually try to make armor more realistically portrayed inside games? So, yeah, comment section down there. Have at it. Centered around one of these. Oh, come on, Flash. Okay, throw that over. One of these. And it's still not flashing! What did I say again? What did I say again? It would have been so much easier had it just flashed right there. If you like this video, then why not hit the like button? In fact, even if you didn't like this video, why not hit the like button anyway? Just to be nice, you can call it your good deed for the day. But if you really did like this video and you want to see more like it, then why not hit the subscribe button? Then my videos will just show up in your subscription feed. And you know what? If you have any kind of feedback at all, leave a comment. If you thought I did something wrong, or you've got something wrong and you want to let me know in a constructive, positive manner, then leave a comment. If you thought I did something really right and you want to congratulate me, leave a comment. If you have suggestions for future content, leave a comment. In fact, if you just have a simple question like what I had for breakfast, leave a comment. I can't promise that I'll answer all of them, but I'll definitely try to read all of them. So until the next video, goodbye.